In January of 2020, DC Comics quietly put out its best Green Lantern story in many years. Maybe decades. But it didn't come in the pages of one of its ongoing monthly comic books. It also wasn't about Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, Kyle Rayner, or any of the other characters that have played the Green Lantern role in the DC universe. This story came to us via a middle-grade graphic novel and starred a 13-year-old boy who inherits a Green Lantern ring from his grandmother. This is the book that reframed a classic comic book hero for the 21st century and ultimately became more poignant and relevant than it ever intended in the wake of a global pandemic. This is Green Lantern Legacy. Green Lantern Legacy was written by Min Lei, an author who's widely known for his children's books. Drawn Together, illustrated by Dan Santat, might be the one he's best known for. Among its litany of awards and accolades, the book received a 2019 Asian Pacific Islander American Award for Literature in the picture book category. Also, I'm not going to say that one of his more recent books, The Blur, made me tear up, but it didn't not make me tear up. Our penciler is Andy Tong, who has a decorated publication resume in his own right. He's done work for most of the major comic book publishers, as well as companies like Nike, Hasbro, Mattel, among others. He's worked on characters like Spider-Man, Batman, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and also video game properties like Tekken and Street Fighter. He also drew all the Zodiac Legacy illustrated novels for Disney, which were co-authored by Stan Lee. So a Green Lantern book was definitely not outside his wheelhouse. Green Lantern Legacy doesn't reinvent the wheel from a storytelling perspective. In many ways, it's your standard superhero origin story. Hero gets powers, hero adjusts to life with powers, hero faces villain, etc. But what makes it unique is its unconventional perspective on who and what a superhero can be. As a brief refresher, Green Lanterns are essentially the space cops of the DC universe. Individuals with the ability to overcome great fear are chosen to protect their native space sectors using superpowered rings that enable them to create any material construct using willpower. Decade after decade, we've seen various Green Lanterns use their rings to create all sorts of constructs. From fighter jets and submarines, to suits of armor, to boxing gloves, to fully built cities, and everything in between. A Green Lantern is only limited by their imagination. The possibilities are virtually endless. Which is why it's disappointing to look back on Green Lantern's 80-plus year history and see the character almost always portrayed the same way. The main character of DC's canonical Green Lantern title is usually cast as your standard muscular male. Which is to say he fits right in with all the other superheroes. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because a Green Lantern's power is rooted in the emotional spectrum and not based on physical skills, they don't have to be super strong, fast, or agile the way other heroes do. As such, if there's one hero that shouldn't conform to the typical standard, it's Green Lantern. Instead of your typical superhero, the character could be, say, a child battling cancer, a transgendered teen discovering who they are, or a war veteran disabled in battle. Again, the possibilities are endless. But in that sense, creators have typically played it pretty safe with Green Lantern. Legacy, on the other hand, places itself outside the typical box by casting its hero as 13-year-old Vietnamese-American Tai Pham. Child superheroes have been around practically since the genre was invented, but the idea lends itself so naturally to the Green Lantern concept that I'm amazed we haven't seen the two intersect more. Say what you want about teenagers and their snotty attitudes, they've got fertile young minds, many of which are overflowing with passion and sex and conflict and sex and the desire to be seen and sex. Give somebody like that a Green Lantern ring, and the results are bound to be interesting at the very least. Granted, this is a middle grade book, so Ty doesn't get that outrageous. But my point stands. A school-aged Green Lantern should have been a thing a long time ago. But perhaps more importantly, Ty inherits the ring from his grandmother, who the story tells us is one of the great Green Lanterns of all time. When was the last time we saw an elderly woman in a superhero role? Much less an elderly Asian woman. It's a choice that's practically never made. But Legacy does it easily by virtue of how a Green Lantern's powers work. Lei, Tong, and the creative team saw an opportunity to be both creative and inclusive, and they went for it. I give them a lot of credit for that. Of Vietnamese descent himself, Lei told The Hollywood Reporter that his grandmother played a key role in his family escaping the country during the Vietnam War. Early in the development of Legacy, he drew inspiration from her life and her story. Quote, "I was looking at Green Lantern and thinking, so there's this character who has a green power ring and draws his power from his own sense of will. And I had this revelation. I know somebody like that. I thought of my grandmother, who always wore a jade ring and was one of the strongest people that I've known, and was very much one of the superheroes of my family story. Once I had that image, the rest of the story just unfolded." End quote. On the subject of the book's Vietnamese influence, while characters like Hal Jordan and Kyle Rayner simply wear their own modified bodysuits, Ty's Green Lantern uniform incorporates a traditional Vietnamese garment. The Ao Dai, a kind of long tunic common among formal wear in Vietnam, makes Ty's look one of the most distinct among his fellow Green Lanterns. Fittingly enough, Lei contributed a short story about Ty's Ao Dai to DC's 2021 Festival of Heroes comic book, which paid tribute to the company's Asian heroes. Fear is a central theme in Green Lantern stories. The Green Power Ring is attracted to and chooses individuals who can overcome great fear through their willpower. It's a core component to most, if not all, the great Green Lantern stories. To that end, Ty has to confront not only superpowered threats, but another enemy that's very much rooted in the real world and in fear: racism. Ty's family runs a market in the fictional Coast City, and a mere 3 pages into Legacy, we see it vandalized. It's the latest in a series of frequent attacks on the Jade Marketplace, and Ty's parents contemplate leaving the neighborhood. His grandmother, however, showing us the will and the fighting spirit that made her a Green Lantern, refuses to be driven away from her home. After her death, Ty must make his own choices about how to stand up to adversity, and what role he'll play in helping others face similar obstacles. It's a story that touches on community, kindness, our shared humanity, and of course, bravery. Keeping all that in mind, Green Lantern Legacy is a story that became particularly poignant, albeit unintentionally so. The book came out in January of 2020. Less than 2 months later, the COVID-19 pandemic began, and the world was shaken to its core. As misinformation about the virus spread, so too did hatred and violence against Asian communities, fueled by allegations that the virus originated in China.
Now to the rise in attacks against Asian Americans across the country.
Hate crimes, racist attacks, and acts of discrimination against Chinese Americans.
Hit me right in the face, and he knocked me pretty much unconscious.
Even more troubling, we are seeing a disturbing rise in hate-filled attacks. This has now led some to worry about how to defend themselves.
I'll also say that our president at the time was not helping matters by calling it the China virus.
The China virus. The Chinese virus.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China.
If you research the resulting violence against Asians on even a cursory basis, it's easy to see that Tai Pham's story was released into a world that very much needed to hear it. And still does. Returning to the idea of community, Tai gets a pretty robust supporting cast. which is impressive when you consider how much the book has to get done with only 125 pages. We have his two best friends, Tommy and Serena, who act as his primary supporting characters. We've got John Stewart, an iconic Green Lantern incorporated to serve as a mentor to Ty. We also briefly establish Ty's nuclear family and his parents and his sister. They don't get a lot of page time, but they're there. And they help put over that much more who this kid is, what his life is like, and what his values are. There's usually an obvious intergalactic sci-fi component to Green Lantern stories. We get scenes in space, on other planets, aliens, etc. Naturally, Legacy has that side to it, but what I appreciate about Andy Tong's art as much as anything else is that it retains a certain clean simplicity to it. Whether we're in Ty's room, the Jade Marketplace, or the Green Lantern's homeworld of Oa, Tong's world is versatile enough to retain its charm and appeal. That's not necessarily an easy thing to do. In a genre that's so often trying to be dark and adult-oriented, it can be easy to forget that superheroes were created for children. Yep, these are children's characters. So it behooves companies like DC to present the most fresh, relevant, and compelling takes on them to move and resonate with the children of today. But we don't always get that from the ongoing monthly comic books at DC, or Marvel for that matter. That's why middle grade and young adult graphic novels like Green Lantern Legacy are so important, and to an extent have an advantage. They're usually not bound by decades of continuity, and are able to do their own thing. In many cases, the creators' unique voices come through much clearer. That was certainly the case with Legacy. In addition to Ty's appearance in the Festival of Heroes issue, the book generated a 2022 sequel, Green Lantern Alliance. And here's hoping Ty Fam's adventures are only beginning.